Hi, and welcome to this session talking about recruiting the next generation into the industry. I'm Tess Howe from TIA, which is the new professional body for agriculture and horticulture, and we're here to help new entrants and the current workforce develop their skills and fulfill their potential. I'm joined by Rob and Hugh today, and we're just going to run through a few bits about recruitment and retention. Hugh and Rob, do you want to introduce yourselves first?
Thanks, Tess. Good afternoon, everybody. Hugh Pocock, one of the directors of Cultural Connect. I'm actually a part-time farmer. I'm a beef and sheep farmer at heart, but also run the recruitment company. And the company is really based around agriculture, anything from graduate to CEO and all sectors within that touches farming in any shape or form.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rob McGregor, and I manage 2 outdoor breeding farms in North Norfolk.
Thank you both. And so to start off the session, when we're talking about the next generation, we often hear from employers that they don't quite meet their work expectations. So maybe don't want to work the long hours, don't want to work on a weekend, which obviously when we're talking about livestock is really important. How would you both respond to that accusation?
Yeah, I think we do have to take it on board that the current workforce, or modern workforce, if you like, has changed its expectations, and maybe we need to alter the way that we manage them and how we provide employment to them. I think many of us were used to working much longer days, up to 60, 70-hour weeks. Now, those days are over. We're now trying to sort of tailor weeks to more like a 45. Livestock, unfortunately, means that weekend working is required. But it is with a lot of other industries and positions as well. So I don't think we need to get too hung up about the weekends. We just need to make the hours more sociable and tailored to the requirements of our staff, really.
So really we could learn a lesson from them. Better work-life balance.
Yeah, we just got to take on board that times have changed. We can't stick with our old attitudes, yeah.
Yep. And Hugh, what would you say?
I think the accusation is right. I think the demands of our employees and the workforce now has changed a lot. There's lots of reasons for that to happen. You know, COVID was one big thing that changed. We've lost a big number of our workforce in all industries, so there's a shortage of labour everywhere. So people have got a lot more choice. So we've really got to think differently how we attract people, but also the sort of working and shift patterns. And I think that's an opportunity for us as an industry, is to actually adopt a new way of working. And I think if you look at process-driven businesses, and there's lots of process-driven businesses here exhibiting today, that's where there's an opportunity, where it's not necessarily a time management situation. Like Rob's slightly different when you're sort of farrowing and so on, but actually if you've got something that can be timed, you can actually change that, and more around this sort of shift pattern. And I've seen businesses that got a queue of people wanting to work for them because they've changed the way they have those working patterns. Definitely,
and those people rarely have labour problems compared to the rest of the industry. Yeah. So, which leads us nicely on to the next point. So, recruiting and retention is quite an obvious area that we're looking at when we need more people in the industry. But perhaps let's start with reputation, which is something that we probably need to build on a little bit when you look at how people think of the industry. And today's job market, there's not a lot of labour there, whichever sector you're working in. So, Hugh, how would you talk to people about building their reputation?
Reputation is obviously everything, and we're in a small industry, and particularly if you're trying to attract staff within your area, you may well be competing with several other farmers looking for the same sort of person. So how do you stand out? One of those things is reputation, and the big driver to reputation is culture. If you don't have a good culture and don't have a good reputation in terms of how you look after people, don't be surprised when people don't come knocking on your door for a job.
Thank you. Rob, TIA did some research on labour market information a couple of years back, and word of mouth still came out as the most prominent way of recruiting people, so asking people you knew and seeing if there was anybody around. How do you build your reputation at a more local level?
So we've become very reliant on the internet and developing an online profile. I've heard a lot of people say that every business in this day and age should have a website, but I think unless you've got somebody on your farm staff who's really prepared to put in the time, keep it fresh, keep it interesting and exciting, it's possibly easier just going down a different route and trying to get media exposure through trials work, getting links, associations with allied businesses, using the press, using the award schemes that we have, and it doesn't take very long before a farm name starts becoming quite Googleable, if you like, if that's a term, and people can find out about you, read about you, and get a real sense of what kind of an employer, what kind of a business, and they're getting involved in, they're looking at.
And sometimes not just about the employee, wider their family as well, looking out for them?
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. We've got to be caring and considerate and make things flexible for families, flexible for family life, but also obviously looking after the interests of the business as well. So building in sort of time shift patterns, if you like, but on the whole, I think we were talking about yesterday about how we're working weekends, working every other weekend, but if you've got a member of the staff who really needs that time off, the family, it's important to the family, then we'll always find a way of drafting in. I've got to be careful today because employers listening, but a semi-retired employer might come back and do a Saturday morning for us to allow that person to have the time off. We'll be as flexible as we can. If it's important to them, we'll always make sure it happens.
Thank you. And Hugh, reputation can change quite drastically when someone leaves the business. How would you sort of have a good exit of a member of staff to maintain that reputation?
Yeah, it's really important. I think you often speak to people and they've just lost an employee and they get particularly angry and frustrated that person's left, but that's something you should really hide behind the scenes. Actually be really pleased for that person to have left, so that they can go away and tell people what a great employer, he left at the door wide open for me, and they may even come back, and that is really, really important. And you hear it so often, all the bad stuff comes out when that person's left. Everybody does something wrong, but let's just keep that to ourselves, and let's you should take people on within your business. We hear this sort of transition of people not being in the business for very long, 2 or 3 years. Actually train people so they're good enough to leave, but actually that they actually still want to stay. So if you have that mindset, you'll have people that go away with a good word to say. Thank you.
So if we look across to recruitment, obviously we're trying to recruit good staff regardless of age, but if we're talking today about younger people, Hugh, what recruitment methods would you say are working right now for people? What are seeing success and not so much?
I guess we have to go from my perspective on the recruitment agency front. The traditional ways of doing it, we talked about word of mouth before, doesn't on its own work. So there's a combination of things. Social media is very, very powerful, as we know. Lots of different formats of that. We talked about the website being a call. I see that as a calling card. It's where someone goes to when they've heard about you, but you've got to have a signpost to that. So that's important. There's lots of free job boards out there, like Indeed, CV Library, Total Jobs. Certainly use those. Your word of mouth is really, really powerful. Telling people, don't be scared of picking up the phone to someone that 20 miles away, another farmer, saying, hey, I'm looking for someone, do you know of anybody? You get that word out there, the whole thing will start to happen. Don't just sit there and think, no one's coming my way. You've actually got to be proactive to go and find people.
I can see on social media there's sort of a rise in the use of videos as the advert. Do you have any strong feelings on that?
Absolutely. You look at all the stats when it comes to social media. Just plain text on its own isn't going to get much engagement. You put a picture out there, get a bit more. You get a video, you'll get a heap more. People are just they're sitting at night. I see it with my children. We're watching telly, but they're also on their phone and they're flicking through stuff that catches their eye. That's what you're trying to achieve. So creating a video about what the working environment looks like. What's special about your farm. Even I did something on my quad bike the other day. We're in the middle of calving our cows. I put a little frame on the front of the quad. I put my phone on there and time lapse. We went round for about half an hour. You create a 5-minute video that looks great. You can stick that on anything. And Rob, you can do that on your farm, no problem at all. And you've got instant something people want to have a look at because it happens really quickly. It's instant gratification. Oh, that's interesting. Let's go.
And Rob, when you're interviewing nowadays, the person you're interviewing is often interviewing you just as much as you are them. So what do you do, as Hugh's just alluded to, what do you do to attract people to your farm and sell your business?
So I think we're lucky in many ways that we have managed to establish those links with a lot of other activities going on. It gives an impression that there's a lot of interest, a lot of excitement around the farm. But also, I think our track record of retention of staff is something that we'd always relate back to when people are coming to interview. That we have people with us who've been with us for multiple years, and return staff as well. You mentioned staff returning. So again, we have people come in, do a few years with us, we do some training with us. They want to progress. I did the same thing in my career path. It's not, there's nothing unusual about that. But if you keep your reputation and they stay in the industry, it's quite possible that they'll come back to knocking on a door one day.
And I think it's a point worth picking up, isn't it, that the next generation don't want to be in a job for 10, 15 years. So how do we approach that and make the most of it? Because it's going to be the norm, and it shouldn't be seen as a bad thing, but often it is.
Yeah, and I think we've come to accept that we can't expect school leavers to come join the business, go through an apprenticeship scheme and just stick with us. None of us really did that. We were changing jobs, changing employers, changing countries, seeing lots and lots of different operations. And young people need that excitement, they need that experience. I think that's part of their training. So I think we do what we can for the entrance into the industry and just make sure that we're there for them later on.
Okay, thanks. So recruitment, I think we've all been through it, can be stressful and it can be very, very time consuming when you've got other jobs to do. So we've all heard of those stories of, well, they weren't quite perfect, but they were the only one that fitted. So I took them and we all know what happens after that. So how do you both ensure that you really are taking on that right person when the pressure's there that you need a body, but how do you make sure you get the right person in potentially a limited pool?
So we do turn the tables. Obviously, they examine our profile online, and we do take the opportunity to have a look at theirs as well. And that sometimes highlights a few red flags at an early stage. That's probably our best. Yeah, sorry.
I think if you look at interview technique, that's something that should be considered. If you go the old school method of having a very strict one question, what's your answer, you're going to have quite a slim view of that individual. And I prefer the technique now of having an informal chat about somebody, talking around the CV, where their interests lie. When people are more relaxed and more informal, they're going to tell you more about themselves. If you ask a direct question, they'll give you a direct answer. So find out a little bit more about them. That's a technique that works really well for us, rather than trying to, because you see in some businesses they want to analyse 4 candidates side by side, so they ask the same questions, but you don't really get a true reflection of what that individual's like. And another area, if it's possible on a farm, is to have somebody for a trial. And it's not necessarily a trial to see how good they are at their job, it's more how they fit with you as an individual, but the other way around too. It's about that chemistry. Can you work together as individuals? If that possibility is there, even if it's just a few extra hours. I've got one client that very regularly will take somebody around their farm for 3 or 4 hours at a time, and that's a very long time, but actually within that period of time you really get to know that person in terms of what they're talking about, the questions they're asking, are they interested, are they engaged.
And I think another area we see as well is that people don't quite know what they're looking for, so they don't get the right person. So job profiles, how would you rate those as important, Hugh, or?
It is, in terms of if you want to look at a certain amount of experience, but someone on paper could look amazing, but in reality, do they fit? Do they have the right personality, the right attitude to what will fit with your business? Is probably more important. But they've obviously got to have some skill sets that suits your business at the same time.
But from a business, you would expect to have a job profile for that particular role?
Yes.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. So onboarding, which sounds very corporate and not necessarily used in farming and growing much, but how important is it to induct people onto the farm, and how much of a part do you think that plays in them staying? For both of you?
Yeah, so we've been quite lucky in the last couple of years. We've managed to develop links with some 15, 16-year-olds who've started to come on farm, spend a bit of time with us, learn the ropes, if you like, and make themselves quite useful, especially weekends. That's quite nice for our permanent staff on the weekends because there's an extra pair of hands. I was talking earlier about not wanting to have people feel like they're tied to the job ultimately, so that's helping us there. And it's a great way. It's it's not quite farmer for a day. It's a little bit better than that.
And Hugh?
Induction, hugely important, because you've gone through a big investment. So somebody's left, so that's taken a bit of a toll on your business. You've gone out there to find someone, you've advertised, spent money, you've used a sort of recruitment agency, then that person comes into that business, they're an investment for you. So how would you look after that investment? You're not just going to give them the keys, here you go, get on with it. What you need to do is really get them to understand your business from start to finish. And we talked about it yesterday, in Rob's business, there could be someone that's focusing on the farrowing side of it. But actually the importance of the farrowing right the way through to the finished pig is really key. So if you can get that person to understand the whole process from birth to slaughter, they understand where their element of the job really fits. So they understand why they need to do a better job, why they need to get more live pigs, why they need a higher growth rate, why they need a healthier pig, and so on. That has an importance. So they're not just looking at their bit. That helps a lot. They also get to meet all the rest of the team. It stops this sort of isolation, going, well, he's not doing it right. Actually, they form part of that team. So massive part of the investment in your business is your people, and investing in that early stage. You've gone to a lot of cost. There's going to be quite a lot of downtime. And I would suggest that people take longer to induct them than you maybe think necessary, because you can do it right at the beginning, but it's too late 6 months down the line when they don't really understand your business. So maybe take them out of what they're doing for a week, even 2 weeks, even longer if need be, so they fully understand all of the business, how you like to work and the different aspects of it.
And do you think at the end of an induction period, it's a good time to have a one-to-one with that person as well?
Absolutely. It should be done all the way through. I have a rule of thumb that I try and get across to people, that actually on the end of day one, you should be sitting down with that individual. How's your day gone? Is there anything you're not sure about? That's your chance to be able to give them feedback, for them to give you feedback. Then do the same at the end of the first week, the end of the second week, and then every month after that. And that will then start to create this opportunity for that feedback in terms of anything they're missing, but it's that one-to-one time that you can have with that individual for a two-way conversation. And you can pick up when people aren't happy, when things aren't going the right way, rather than sitting in the pickup, driving down the road, talking about what's going on. It's actually a bit of time to speak about those as individuals.
I think that keeping connected is extremely important, and there's lots of ways it can be done. It doesn't have to be an informal meeting. It can be working together as a pair, and you slowly move on to other topics. You talk about the business, you talk about their personal life, themselves, whatever their aspirations, and you can build on that. Just keeping connected. And some people want more of it than others, and I think the younger generation definitely probably expect it, actually. So from a manager, that's a key part of my operation.
And I think yesterday you both made the point, it's about the individual, isn't it, and what they need, rather than you having a standard format for every person in the same way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, some people are quite happy to be kept in touch with, but left reasonably alone, lone workers, if you like, quite happy as individuals, and others love a team and a team spirit and a competitiveness as well.
And I think as well that regular communication stops the fear when you call someone into the office. Do you see that?
It's certainly got to be a very friendly working environment, a caring working environment in this day and age. The days of dictatorial management and stroppy bosses, I think, are well and truly over. People want to feel like they're being appreciated and respected as well. Yeah.
I think if you go back to that one-to-one, if you bring that one-to-one in all of a sudden, people think, well, I'm in trouble. What have I done wrong? So actually having it as a regular thing allows you to address the problems as they come along.
And so when you look to research about the different generations and their working habits, what drives them, if you look at millennials, which is sort of your late 20s to early 40s, it tends to be progression opportunities, and that can be seen as difficult in farming when it's quite a flat structure, and they like transparency. But you look to Gen Z, and it's more about the values aligning and what are you doing on welfare, environment, etc. But they really like that feedback that you've just touched on as well. So what do you both suggest about looking to help retain this next generation?
So I think being a busy business, being sort of dynamic thinking, if you like, gives a lot of opportunities to get your staff involved in a little bit more than possibly if we were just getting on with their own work and not really engaging with anyone else. They find it rewarding. It shouldn't always be myself that's showing people around. We have lots of visitors. If we can get other people involved, initially possibly alongside me, but as time goes by, let them do an audit, let them do a vet visit. If we have overseas visitors, let them spend time with that person. Don't hog all the sort of novelty occurrences, if you like, for myself. And then obviously we had a situation last summer where we had a Danish visitor, And after his time with us, an open invitation for a return visit was thrown open. And I'm hoping very much that one of our junior staff is going to be, hopefully we'll all get a chance to go. We'd all love to go, but if she can head over there and have the first visit, and I think so thank you to her and a reward, that'd be a wonderful thing to happen.
That's brilliant. Hugh?
Yeah, I think, Gen Z is something we've got to get used to managing, and I think I read something the other day that in 6 years' time, 40% of our workforce will be made up of Gen Z. I talked to a group of farmers the other day, and they said, well, we can do without you, Gen Z. We don't need them. We need them. We need everybody involved in it. We need more people coming into the industry. So how do we look after those people is going to be key. And I think if you look at what's driven the way they want to be appreciated is they've seen their parents' generation working extremely long hours, and we've got to think carefully about that. We touched on it before in terms of working and shift patterns. So we've got to look a little bit differently at that. We've got to allow that a bit of flexibility as well. And really sort of valuing those staff and appreciating them and developing them within and be prepared that they will leave as well.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions from the floor? We've got a roving mic if anybody wants to ask anything. Oh, we've got two.
Yeah. Rob, really great to hear that you're engaging 16-year-olds and you've got a pool that are coming into the business. How are you engaging them, or how are you attracting them into the business? What's the secret there for you?
So obviously we've got a staff of approaching 10 in total. Some of them have come through friends, family connections, and once you have one, you often find another through their own links. But it is just really that profile and the exposure we've given the farm that there are people out there, there are good people out there, and the chances are they're going to find us first. In our area, we're going to be flagged up as come and ask. So I think that's probably been the secret, just being visible.
Yeah, great to hear.
There was one just at the back.
So, Stephen Oldfield, picking up the Gen Z reference, Hugh, when you're talking to Gen Z about potential opportunities in the industry, what are the top 3 things that they want in a job, and how do they match what the atypical farmer, and I know there isn't one, might be offering?
So, a great question. We don't do an awful lot direct to farm. So, what I can say is from the experience I've had with Gen Z, it's multifaceted. They like to know a lot more about the business itself and don't want to go in blind. I know when I sort of was on the first offer job, I was like flattered that someone offered me a job, whereas today it's really knowing a lot more about what that job is about. So that would be one thing. You would have thought pay is almost like is always comes up into conversation. They know what they're worth. There is a shortage, so people do know what they should be getting, and then it is that sort of working environment. What's that looking like? How many hours am I expected to work? Because they also have a social life, and they want to continue that. They know the environment they enjoy, and why should that change? And that's something we really need to be mindful of.
I think I'd agree with the free time aspect of that as well. We do need to offer people more time off, and if it's possible for the business to increase holiday allowance, that's quite a cost-effective way of making possibly the business more attractive to people, offering something that not everyone else is, but it's certainly appreciated by staff members as quite a generous reward.
If I could just add a little bit onto that, it's one thing I've seen the change, and I think COVID's been the change in this, whether it's Gen Z or any age within the population now. Is we do quite a lot of roles that would be international sales or business development. There's less and less people prepared to spend a lot of time away from home. And I think that as a change, that Gen Z has something to do with that. They want to be socializing with people. They don't want to away from family. It has changed people's mindset. So I think we have to look at how we manage our businesses accordingly.
And it was speaking to a farmer who's in quite a remote location as well. He lets his staff finish early one day because if they want to go and socialise, and if you're on a farm and it's a small farm, you're not meeting people. Finishing at 6 o'clock is no good. You're not getting out and then expected to be back at work. So actually, he lets them go early one day a week, so they can go and have that socialisation as well. And his retention has gone up for that. So I think it's thinking out the box sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, we had a client last week actually, and it was actually an arable assistant farm manager, and they said, well, to attract people, there's got to be more than just sitting on the tractor all week. And in terms of the finishing hours, so they made it quite clear that actually we're going to start at 7 in the morning, but every day, apart from harvest, you're going to be finishing at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, which I was amazed by. I've never heard a farm wanting to allowing that. And he said, this is because we believe in looking after people, we're family focused, that's the key thing. And on a Friday, they finish at 2:30, which is, again, I think is unheard of in the farming industry. And even within harvest, they still have a deadline in terms of or a finish time, no later than 10 o'clock. Rather than pushing all the way through the night, because then that person's got to come back the next day and they've got to think about health and safety, the well-being of these people, because you see some people, they'll do a full summer or 2 summers, I'm not going to do that again. It's too much. And so there's change.
I know there's a farm manager that makes sure his entire staff have a week's leave before harvest and everything's planned around that, so they come into harvest fresh. And it pays them as well because there's no accidents, which is huge, isn't it? So we are coming up to time now. So can I just ask, you've given loads of great insight and advice to the group, but what would be one thing you would suggest to people? Rob?
I think we've got to go back to the profile of the business and developing visibility, but also taking an honest look at what we're actually providing in terms of facility, what meets people when they arrive on farm, first impressions. We have to compete with other sectors, and I think if we're falling way behind them, we've only got ourselves to blame, really. So just take an honest look at ourselves, make sure we're doing everything we can to attract the right type of people, the types of people we want in our business.
Yeah, fantastic. And Hugh?
We talked a bit about it, well, quite a lot about it today, really, is communication. Communication is absolutely key with any business. And that can be, as we talked about, one-to-ones, but it'll also be in terms of keeping your team informed about what's going on in the wider business, how their business is performing. If your business is not performing particularly well, let people know that, because they may wonder why you're not replacing equipment, why are things a bit slower, and what are you doing to change that? Don't just be sitting there in the dark. Getting people together regularly as well to communicate as a team, not just as individuals, I think would be really important.
That's brilliant. And thank you very much for both giving up your time yesterday and today. Really appreciate it. And so if there's no more questions, we'll bring it to a close. Thank you very much.
Thank you.